Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is cori-phoroi, and today we're going to look at Aquila lore and mythology, part 2 on Poseidon's dungeon and Aquila, known as Atlantia. Apologies if there's loud noises and music in the background. My neighbors upstairs are having a party, and I promised a friend that I would finish this video before a certain day, so apologies if you can hear that. So part 2, who is Poseidon? Because he's the main boss of the dungeon. So Poseidon Earthquaker is the god of the sea, and Earthquaker is just his epithet for Wizard101. Fun fact about him is that he has the most children out of everyone in Greek myth. There are so many myths about him just assaulting princesses. Seriously, this man is way too horny. Get a grip, Poseidon. Just rub one out like the rest of us. So I want you guys to know that as soon as I finished writing that joke, my parents texted me about how they felt an earthquake. So Poseidon wins on that one. Good job. So here's just the boring setup. At level 70, after you've beaten Sepharia, you get a quest from Cyrus Drake to talk to Romulus. Again. And he sends you to the second part of Aquila. So you talk with Silenus, who then just sends you to Vesper, who's his, middle daughter. And Vesper is the name of the evening star, which I guess fits for a bird. I don't know. It's not like there are any bird constellations. Not like there are any bird constellations or anything. Not even Aquila is named after one. Anyways, moving on to Atlantia. It's just a reference to the city of Atlantis. In fact, Atlantia is just the feminine version of the word Atlantis. The story of Atlantis is just from one of Plato's works. It's a thought experiment, an example of a city that just drinks too much hubris juice and then gets sunken by the gods. So just for convenience sake, Poseidon just lives down there, because underwater. So here's a fun little thing on before you start the dungeon. So outside the dungeon entrance on the dock, there are a handful of NPCs holding a scroll. Now in my last video, I mentioned knowing ancient Greek, so here's where I get to show it off. So I tried to pick out the words, but it was really hard. So here's my attempt. Feel free to pause the video and compare the two for a second, because I'm not gonna... it's hard deciphering low quality text. So I'm gonna reveal the actual text here, and what matters is the red underlines at the little start of each line. Feel free to pause to see how wrong I was on my little transcription. So I got some of the articles, I'm just not used to the dialect, which is a little bit of a hint of what this is. So I'm just going to remove my attempt so you can see the full text. And if you want to figure out this yourself, feel free to pause. I am going to give a few hints. I would recommend looking at the second word in line 21, sounding that out if you know the letters, or the second word in line 18, revealing the answer in 3, 2, 1. It's the Odyssey. These are lines 111 to 119, and here's my own personal translation of what their scroll says. If you want a real translation of this full section, you can find free copies of the Odyssey online. It's just a page down, because this is the first few words. So there's a second group of NPCs by the little temple near the stairs that also have the scroll. And so because the Greek is formatted wrong, I would recommend that KingsOwl replace it, but I'm too lazy at the current moment to write something out in ancient Greek and say use this instead. So maybe I'll make a completely separate video with a handful of ideas and drafts. We'll see. It would probably just be translated monologues of ancient Greek of my vision seems to be failing me. Are you a boy or a girl? Like something like that, Hermes Winged Wayfinder. So he's the guide for this dungeon. He's just a brown eagle. I'm not going to argue with that design choice. So winged refers to the fact that he is a bird. Just kidding. He wears winged sandals to fly around everywhere, which begs the question, does he, need them for this design if he's a bird? Whenever he flies around? Does it get in the way of his wings? Or, is he used to them? Is it, training wheels? Anyways. So Wayfinder, I'm not too sure of why that's in his name, as related epithets are more a messenger or a guide than a Wayfinder, though I can't decide if my favorite epithet of his is Creophoros or Poneomenos, which basically mean ram carrier. And Poneomenos means work doing, but it could also just, I like busy. There's also Karidotes, which means friend of the feast, but I feel in a modern context, you could theoretically translate it to mukbang or mukbanger. Anyways, what matters here is the fact that I think it should have been Aphrodite instead of Hermes here, because Hermes should have been the guide for the third dungeon, which is Hades, because Hermes canonically guides souls down to the underworld, and I would have preferred Aphrodite here because she was born from the sea. So, first combat encounter, we're mixing Greek and Roman again. Fun fact, in ancient Greek, having bodyguards was kind of like a big no-no. So Herodotus details a story about this guy, Pisistratus, who stabbed himself with a sword and pretended that he was attacked. And he asked other people to, like, help protect him. So he got a bunch of guys with, like, clubs together, and then he overthrew the government. Also, he details how Pisistratus didn't want any new kids with one of his wives, because he went through, like, a lot of wives. This is, like, his third wife. So he would sleep with her, quote-unquote, the other way. But when his father-in-law found out he was doing butt stuff, Pisistratus was exiled. But don't worry, he came on her back. And by her, I mean Athens. 3 times. This man could Athens 3 times. I know. Shout out Pisistratus. So, your first real boss fight is Lamia. And she was the queen of Libya and a daughter of Poseidon. She had an affair with Zeus, and because of this, Hera took her kids away, and out of grief, she clawed out her eyes, which you can see by her design. She still does have eyes, and also breasts, even though she's a shark, so maybe I'll claw out my eyes instead of, because of that design choice. Oh my god. So after she loses her eyes, Zeus turns her into a monster so she could get revenge for losing her kids by eating other people's kids. That's how that works, you know? So fun fact, she's also the mother of Scylla, who shows up in Pirate 101. Anyways, so Lamia does refer to a specific kind of shark in Greek, so that's why she's depicted as a shark, because it means shark, and it's why the minion you fight in this fight is also a shark. And she has a spell in the test realm that never made it into game, and a retired treasure card that did. So after you fight her, you have to grab this little alabaster sea cow. Sea cows, or Ophiotaros, are basically like, okay, you know the meme of having like a minotaur dad and a mermaid mom and ending up with the human half of both? So this is the opposite of that. Of you have bull and fish tail. That was not the myth on how the sea cow came to be. Myth of the sea cow is that, so when the Titans were fighting the gods and when they were having their war, the Titans killed it, and they went to sacrifice its insides for a ritual to ensure victory. And so the gods ended up just stealing the corpse of the sea cow, and they turned it into the constellation Taurus. Anyway, so I don't think that the alabaster sea cow is a real furniture item, but if King Zal is listening, then please, it is so cute. I want one for my sunken palace house. Please, 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 please. And then we get to Orion's spiny stallion. He's guarding the onyx sea cow, which is just, you just have to get the 2 sea cows in the House of Fury. So Orion, he was the son of Poseidon and an unwilling horse Demeter. He was passed around to like a few mythological heroes, and he's just a cool horse. His minion in this fight is just a scaled Equus. So if you don't know, Poseidon is the father of horses. He made them at some point. Some myths say that he made horses when him and Athena were fighting over who gets the namesake of Athens, which, guess who won that? And that in that contest, he made Arion, though some other sources say he made like a saltwater spring. So it's Athena won, that's all that matters. And Equus is just horse in Latin. It's just like a slightly different conjugation. And then we get to Achilles the Contriver, who is in the Hall of the Contriver, which is an epithet of Aphrodite. So he's the son of Lamia and Zeus, but they don't tell you that in-game. Because if you remember, Lamia's father is Poseidon. Yes, that means what you think it means. So basically, Achilles pulled in I'm prettier than Aphrodite and got uglified. That's why he's a shark. And you fight him, and then you break the curse on him, and Aphrodite clears. And I know she does. Even though she doesn't show up, how do I know? The Aphrodite carvings. So these are the only depictions of Aphrodite in-game, and I'll give you a few seconds to look at the carvings here because they have damage at different points. Excluding plant Aphrodite, she's not relevant here. So I think Aphrodite is a swan from this image, which you can probably tell from the wide-shaped beak, a very waterfowl-looking beak. So again, I would have preferred Aphrodite to be the guide instead of Hermes, but I can also imagine why they didn't want her in a kid's game. So it makes sense why she's like a waterfowl, given that this is like the underwater section and she's birthed from the sea, but she doesn't ever show up as an NPC. I would have preferred her to be like a dove because of the romantic implications that we associate with doves, but there is also that one life spell with swans. So, Also, because if they ever were to do like more and they were to make Hera, Hera would most likely either be a swan or a peacock. And if Hera was a peacock, it would mean she'd be trans. Because those kinds of peacocks are the boy peacocks. And females are peahens. I think it would be cool if they made Hera trans. We just need more gay rep in this game. We need any gay rep in this game. But King's Isle is not watching at this point, with the jokes I've made. Sirens! Sirens are mythological creatures who lure passing ships to crash into the rocks or for sailors to like jump in the water and swim to them. So there's a popular misconception that their intent is to seduce men with like how pretty they look. When in myth, we see them in the Odyssey, for example, they're singing songs about Odysseus' glory and his fame, and they're playing on his ego. So the Sirens could get any Wizard101 player by boosting their ego for completing the Beastmen Fight Club side quests. So I couldn't find anything on the name Tellus, except it's like one of Heracles' sons, but that seems to be unrelated. So I've had to guess it's related to the Greek word for telos, meaning like ending, accomplishment, or finishing, which, yeah, I'm pretty sure some people have to her. Lost Maiden. You run into her and her crewmates. This doesn't have anything. It's not really related. It's just a reskin Queen Calypso fight and Ship of Fools as the minions. So Queen Calypso, or just Calypso, was one of the daughters of the Titan Atlas. And when the Titans lost the war, she was on the Titan side. She didn't really do anything wrong. They just kind of keep her as a prisoner on an island. And Odysseus gets stuck there once for 7 years. She does a cool little monologue in the Odyssey that calls out the hypocrisy that male gods can sleep with whoever, but female gods more often than not get in trouble for doing so, which is very girl boss. Except she's not really referring to consensual relations, which is significantly less girl boss. So that myth does not have anything to do with here, except for the namesake of Calypso. And the Atlantean Triarchs, they just guard the Palace of Atlantia where Poseidon is. Triarchs are basically just rich people. So in Athens, if you were like extraordinarily wealthy, you had a bunch of money, instead of like traditional taxes, it's like you would sponsor a festival every year. You would sponsor a trireme, which is just a kind of boat. So if you were like a triarch, it meant that you were paying like a bunch of money to maintain like this military ship. So you're basically just fighting for rich guys here. That's what this is. And then Poseidon. This is when you fight Poseidon. He has 2 different cheats in this fight. One where you can't cast traps on him, which is just really annoying and makes the fight a bit harder. And the other where he says, the immortals are infallible. And then he casts infallible. Good job. I don't have much to say after you just like beat him. You finish the dungeon. So thank you for watching. Part 2, sorry for the delay. I should have part 3 on that Hades dungeon coming out really soon. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, anything. I have a Bluesky, so feel free to follow me there. And I wanted to make this video funnier, so I hope you guys found it funny. And I will see you all for part 3.